Yes, every single time. So funny. Oh, I love it. Hi,
Welcome to
everyone.
Fempreneur True Confessions Podcast
And this
2024.
right, which is going to be the best year. So it is full circle. We're here. 2024 is rocking. So I'm Laura. And if you don't know from first season, I own a virtual assistant and project management agency. And if you have questions about that, we can always talk later. But let's just get on past that. So, Angelique, would you like to say
Yeah,
hi to everybody?
I'm Angelique with Lady Power Solutions, and Laura and I uh, kind of do the same things, and we support each other. And the podcast kind of came out of that. So, our mission with the podcast is if this is your first time here, this podcast is all about empowering women in business and, you know, modeling what authenticity and supporting each other instead of competing with each other, what that looks like. Normalizing, that we can, as women business owners, we can support each other and not compete with each other, that there's enough to go around for everybody.
Right. I love that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So,
Yeah.
and you said it greatly. So, um, just that bit about normalizing and what that's all about. And with that, we bring on these amazing guests who we have said all along that seem to line themselves up in great,
Mhm.
great ways. And we're so excited because this year kicks off the same exact way. Everybody is kind of aligned themselves in their weeks, and it's going to seem to flow wonderfully this year. So we are really excited to bring that all back. And kind of remind everyone we're still in that season of support and love, and what business looks like is different. And
Yeah.
those changes are good. They're time to be embraced. And we really are excited to be a part of that, that difference that's going to be coming in as time goes on. So, all
Yeah.
right. So, I would
Today,
love to introduce our guest, and her name is Michelle. Okay. We had forgot to take her off. I apologize. So we'll bring her back on. And Michelle Cameron, she is a director of the Writers Circle, a New Jersey based creative writing program serving children, teens, and adults. Among her successes is founding the Summer Creative Writing Intensive for teens who love to write, which she and her business partner, Judith, sorry about that,
It's okay.
Judith Lindberg, run every summer at Drew University in Madison, New Jersey. She is also extremely proud of the 8 adult students in her novel class who have completed and published their
that's
novel.
so cool.
That is wonderful. Yes. So I have to look at those. Michelle is also the author of the Jewish historical fiction, with her most recent being Babylon, a novel of Jewish captivity. Previous work includes the award-winning Beyond the Ghetto Gates and the fruit of her hands, the story of Shira and the okay
Sure.
Ashken
Ashkenaz. Yes, that's a
Ashkenaz.
tough one.
She has also published a verse novel, In the Shadow of the Globe, Napoleon's Mirage, the sequel to Beyond the Ghetto Gates, and that is forthcoming in August of 2024. Michelle lives in Chatham, New Jersey with her husband and has 2 grown sons of whom she is inordinately proud of. So welcome. We're so
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you both. I'm so pleased to be here.
I'm so impressed, Laura. You said Chatham correctly.
oh, I am a New Yorker, so I've been from there.
Right. And I would have said Chatham.
Uh,
Oh, I didn't think about that.
Yeah. The Southern Belle here would say Chatham. So I'm so glad that you did that. So Michelle, I have to tell you, I was so excited when I saw you book with the podcast because I have been wanting to write a book for several years now. I've been trying, I really have, but
mm,
I have a lot of trauma to process before,
wow.
and of course, you don't realize that until you start doing it. Um, but I actually hired a writing coach, and then the same month I was supposed to start, my youngest brother passed away, and this was
Oh, I'm
3
so
years
sorry.
ago. So
Mm.
then I put it off, and then I tried again the next year, and I tried again last year. I had a car accident in 2022. I've spent the last year and a half recuperating,
Okay.
and I'm finally starting to feel human again. Um, so I was so excited to get this chance to talk to you, and and just like also, I just noticed, I'm sorry. Um, Somebody is watching somewhere. And if you are, I think it's on YouTube, please drop a comment so we know who you is. And feel free to ask any questions. We absolutely love it when you guys interact with us while we're live. Okay. So absolutely do that. But anyway, super excited because you actually have the same last name as one of my favorite authors.
Okay. Which one is
Um,
that? Because there are a few of them.
Yeah, now I've blanked. I just blanked. I had it and I just blanked.
Don't
Um,
worry about it. I do that all the time.
she wrote a book with no, she didn't write a book with Natalie Goldberg. She was in a speaking engagement with Natalie Goldberg.
Is it Julia
Yes,
Cameron?
Julie Cameron.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Daily Pages.
Morning
She's
pages,
great.
absolutely.
Morning Pages, rather.
Yeah.
Yes.
Um, so I heard about her many, many, many moons ago. I think probably when I was in high school. And just love her, and she's prolific, like she writes
Yes, she is.
so much. So and this wasn't part of our little outline or anything, but so I have to know, one of my favorite authors. Who are some of your favorite authors, since we're talking about writerly stuff?
Stuff here. There's so
I know
many.
it's
It's
hard. I know it's
so
hard.
hard. It's so hard to choose. I read a lot of historical fiction because, of course, that's what I write. But it would be almost impossible to name one person
Right.
because then I'd be afraid of the others. I will say, um, a huge Jane Austen fan. I even have the T-shirt. We went to Bath one year, and I got a
Ooh,
T-shirt that said, "This is what a Janeite looks like," on the T-shirt.
very cool.
So, I mean, I love contemporary fiction. I love historical fiction. But I definitely, my comfort reading is I go back to Austen, to the Brontes, to Thackeray. I reread those all the time.
Yeah. And that's why I stress one of my favorite authors, because Natalie Goldberg is another one, and
She's
Elizabeth
wonderful.
Berg is another one, and
Yes.
I mean they're just we could go down a rabbit hole. So I'm going to try and get us back on track here. I love to talk about writing.
Well, I do want to say, we are based in New Jersey, but a lot of our classes are virtual. So if you wanted to explore that, I mean, I think one of the reasons why my students have had so much success is the accountability that a class gives you.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
Accountability. Let's talk about that. Accountability is important, not just in writing, but in business as well.
absolutely.
There's so much um, that can happen, positive impact that can happen when we hold ourselves accountable and we have someone else to hold us accountable. I mean, that's why I think some coaches, business coaches are fantastic, but the ones who hold you accountable, or that have an accountability aspect to their coaching,
Mhm.
because I've been in coaching programs that didn't really have a lot of accountability. And I feel
Mhm.
like there's some wasted time and money there.
I think that's absolutely right. I mean, early on, before I was in a business, I took some writing classes online, early online classes, and they did not work for me at all. So
Mhm.
I think you're absolutely right.
Yeah. Accountability, hot
Yeah.
topic. So with this podcast, we like to just share, some gems. And How long have you been doing the business part?
So the business part is almost 12 years now.
Okay.
Um, and I mean, before that, I was working for digital agencies and corporate companies and things like that. But one of the reasons why I was so excited about this was because it helped me get to one of my big ambitions, which was to get to what I called the writing life. So it's not just me sitting in a room writing, it's me sharing what I know with my students of, basically all ages. I mean, we start with third graders, although I don't teach the third graders anymore. I have to start it out there, but I don't do that anymore. But
Tough
certainly,
crowd.
oh boy. Although I have to say, their imaginations are
Yes.
unparalleled.
Yeah.
But I teach our teens, our tweens, and of course our adults.
Awesome.
And it's wonderful to just surround yourself with that. That was something that made a huge difference in my life.
And I have to say that one of the most impactful things for me was in junior high. And I can't remember, I think it was in eighth grade. A poet came to our school, and
Aw.
I went to a little school in, so the town we lived in had about 200 people in it, so it's barely considered a city. It was in rural South Dakota.
Mhm.
And our seventh and eighth graders were in one classroom. That's how small this was. All of the
Wow.
grades were in one building. So not very big at all. And so this poet, his name was Jack Kreitzer, and I will remember his name to the day I die. He made such a huge impact on me. See, I'm starting to get like emotional because he
Aw.
came and he taught us that poetry isn't is for everybody
Yes.
and that anybody can write poetry. And
Yes.
of course, he taught us haikus and all that stuff. But he also published our poetry and our art, the drawings that, so some of the kids prefer to draw,
Of course.
right? And versus the words. But I love the words. I was a huge reader and loved the words. And, uh, I still have, and I corresponded with him. He was like a pen pal for a while.
Oh wow. That's great.
And I kept those letters. I kept the little book that all of our poetry was published in. I think it was called Prairie Winds. And don't ever underestimate the impact that you can have on another person just by sharing your experiences and your advice. And that's why I feel like, women entrepreneurs, it's so important for us to share our stories.
Yeah. No, I think that's so true. And honestly, when we look for instructors, we're looking for that generosity of spirit, that desire to share,
Mhm,
is
mhm.
so important. Um, and we've been so fortunate in finding some amazing instructors. I mean, you're talking about poetry, and we've got a couple of poets, one of which, Catherine Doty, teaches at our summer intensive. And we have kids coming in who are like, yeah, poetry, who cares? But by the
Yeah.
time they're done with her,
Oh.
she absolutely turns them into
Mhm,
lovers of poetry.
mhm. Yeah. And it has, I think, become more like mainstream, like the spoken word, now they call it.
Yes, yes.
And it's become very powerful through social media, and then I just love seeing that, and the stories that are being told in spoken word, um, just they'll move you. They
Oh,
emotionally move you. It's
absolutely.
fabulous.
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
let's pretend that you're sitting down with your bestie and you guys are got your glass of wine or cocoa or tea or whatever, and you're talking about life, and business comes up, and you start talking about the struggles between the juggling between the being a writer and writing the book and running the business and being a writer in the business and all the things. And if there was one piece of advice you could give her, you know, not necessarily because she's struggling with the same issues, but
Sure.
just like, like general piece of advice. This is one thing I wish that I had done differently or that I learned to do differently because I tried it 1,500 other ways and finally found the special sauce, right?
Okay. I'm going to actually start with the special sauce, which is something we did early on in our partnership, Judy and myself, is that when we sat down to write our partner, paper, I don't even remember what it's called, but we added the fact that we were writers first and business women after that. And
Mm,
that's taken us through a lot. It's also at times caused some issues because you use the word juggle, and that's so much what it is. Um, it's a matter of there are specific periods of time um, when we're trying to line up the next session and see who's going to teach what, or um, in that week before, week during, and the week after classes start, and all the pieces like, you know, parents suddenly realize that their soccer schedule isn't going to allow their darling to join us for a class, but could they move it to another one, which we always say yes to. But there are definitely periods of time, and certainly during that 3 weeks of the summer intensive, where I've learned not to worry about the fact that I'm not writing because it's impossible.
mm,
There's just so much going on that you can't just focus in. Um, but on the other hand, I've also learned, and I try to teach some of my writers this, how much writing you can do in a short burst. And so that's has been very valuable to me, is that you don't have to entirely give it up during those busiest periods. You can
Mhm.
still sit down and accomplish something. Um, in my particular case, if we really want to talk about, you know, problems and issues here, I've been very fortunate in my business partner. You goofed a little before and said my husband, and it's funny because we call each other our work wives because
uh-huh.
we really are. There are days I see and talk to Judy more than my husband.
Right.
Um, but we have very different work schedules. I am a morning person. I have always been a morning person, and Judy's a night owl. And
Mhm.
so one of the things I've had to adjust to is the fact that I'll get up in the morning and I will say, all right, I have all of these tasks I have to get done for the writer's circle. I'll get those done and then I'll focus on my writing. So around about 2 o'clock, that's when I'm like, okay, fine. And that's when Judy sort of, knocks on my computer and says, okay, let's get going here.
Mhm.
That's can
Yeah.
be frustrating. And it's probably frustrating on her end of things because I'm like, really? I just spent hours.
Mhm.
Um, but we've learned each other's schedules.
Mhm.
So I think that's been and the way we each prefer to work.
And I've
So
I've heard that very similar advice. Um, so the writing coach, she's actually been on the podcast. We've had several people who've written books that have been on the
mm,
podcast. But
Mhm.
Allie Berthume, AY Berthume, was on the podcast, and I helped her launch her first book.
okay,
And
wonderful.
so she had um a writing subscription, basically, where she would be available for a certain period of time on a regular basis to sit down and give advice, answer questions. But she also included a 15-minute writing sprint. and it was amazing. And if you needed
Yes.
her to supply you with a topic or a subject, she did
Yep.
that. But it was amazing how much you can get done in 15 minutes.
Oh,
You
absolutely.
don't need hours and hours. Okay.
No.
We're not all Hemingway. And so that's been something that I've heard from multiple people,
Right.
writers, successful published authors, that it doesn't, we're not all Elizabeth Bergs and morning pages people.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's, I get inspired at the weirdest times. And we even had that conversation about how it, yeah, inspiration sometimes, oftentimes will come in the freaking shower. They actually make waterproof notepads for showers
Yes.
for writers.
Yes, they do. And in fact, we one holiday season, that's what we gave to all our instructors
I mean,
as a holiday gift.
it
Smart.
doesn't,
Yeah.
it sounds frivolous, but it's so practical because it never
Absolutely.
fails. You get in the shower and
Mm.
you've got shampoo in your eyes and you're like, wow, that would be a great whatever.
Absolutely.
What's really
Yeah.
neat about all that is that even that implied into kind of everything in your life, where it's like the micro steps of writing or the sprints and different things. So it's those same things. You're gonna get so much more accomplished than you think in those little teeny tiny things than trying to look at such a big picture of it. And I know as business owners, a lot of us are just big visionaries and we forget how to reel that in sometimes. But
Hmm.
that's
Mhm.
really what it is. It's those teeny tiny little steps, and you're like, oh wow, there was a lot, you know. And if you're
Yeah,
not someone who sees it easy, you can always track it and then look back and be like, whoa, I
exactly.
did
No,
this
and
so
I think it also applies to business. I think
Hmm.
sometimes we all get overwhelmed by
Yeah.
the large scope of what
The
we've got
elephants,
to
right?
do. Exactly. But if you say, all right, well, let's chunk this down and
Mhm.
do it a piece at a time, it's amazing how much you can get done, again, in small pieces of time.
And
Yeah.
that's that saying that says, how do you eat an elephant?
Yes.
One bite at a time,
One bite at a time. Exactly.
you know? Um, so I think that's fantastic. So, you know, I don't like to focus on the negative. I'm a very,
Mm.
I like to, I'm not into toxic positivity by any means, not at all. But, if we don't make mistakes, we don't learn. If we don't fail, we can't fail forward. So, that's why, these challenges, these hurdles, these mistakes, um, it's important for us to share what we've learned from them so that the next generation or even just your, the next person you talk to doesn't have to make
Absolutely.
that same mistake. They can learn
Ab-
from your failures or, and again, failures has this negative connotation. Failure is feedback. That's all it is. It's
mhm.
not a judgment,
Lessons. Yeah.
Yeah,
right?
I think that's absolutely true.
So I've prefaced. Now I'm going to ask the question. What was the biggest mistake you made when you published and you had to juggle the two? Um, the when that first book you published and then the second book, and what did you learn with each one? How did it affect the decisions as you continue to publish subsequent books?
Sure,
What kind of like changes did you make?
sure. Yeah, no, it was interesting. The first book I published when I was a director of the Writers Circle was Beyond the Ghetto Gates. Now, I have to say, I had never, ever had good luck in the timing of my publications. Um, Never. And I'm a little worried about Napoleon's Mirage, and I'll tell you why. But the first book that I published, the first historical novel I published, was during a recession year. Um, and so they let my editor go basically 3 days before the book came out, which was terrible because I do always say I'm lucky it wasn't 3 months, or I probably wouldn't have had a book.
Yeah.
But that was terrible because I lost my advocate at Simon and Schuster, which is where I was first published.
Mm-hmm.
My second book was Beyond the Ghetto Gates. Um, And that was published in April of 2020. So,
Oh,
Wow.
which, you know what? Actually, that was the
It
best
must
time to
be.
publish.
Yeah. That's
well,
good.
You had
there
a captive audience.
Later.
there was definitely a silver lining there.
Mhm.
And among the silver linings, first of all, was the fact that I could sit right here and talk to readers in California and in, Florida, etc. The other slight silver lining was the whole thing with promotion of a novel. Now, it doesn't matter who publishes you. There isn't, unless you are a serious front list author, the publishing house is going to do very little for you in terms of promotion
Yeah,
and
we've heard
publicity.
that too.
Yeah.
It's been
Absolutely.
consistent.
Yes,
You
indeed.
are your own promoter.
You are your own promoter. And so one of the things that was slight silver lining was that, pretty much all of my promotion had to be done, via social media, via, reaching out to people, newsletters, things like that. And then trying to book events, again, pretty much all via Zoom or
Mhm.
some other, virtual media. The reason why that was a slight silver lining in terms of the business is while it took a tremendous amount of time, I could always juggle that with the business.
Mhm.
It's been different a little bit with the publication of Babylon, which also had its own problem launch because it was published in September of this year, no, of last year,
Last year,
2023,
I know.
last year. And then, of course, the crisis happened in Israel,
Mhm.
and I'm a Jewish author.
Mhm.
And so this is not, and it's the full title of the book is Babylon, a novel of Jewish captivity.
Mhm.
I had no intention of any of that,
Right.
when I went to publish the book. But it is harder when I have to get in the car and go places
Right.
versus staying right here. I welcome it, obviously, but it is, in terms of the business, you do have to put some of the business sort of slightly on hold.
Yeah.
Now, again, I've been very fortunate that my business partner is so sympathetic to this. I mean, if I were working a corporate job, I don't know how I would manage.
Right.
Right.
So that has also been a plus, and I'm looking forward to returning the favor when her book is published this coming May.
Nice.
So so that will be really good. But yeah, it's definitely you're at that point you're juggling not two things but three things because
Mhm.
you're still thinking about and researching and writing the next book while you're running a business, while you're promoting a book. So it gets more complicated and sort of more demanding.
Sure.
So what was the main thing, the main takeaway as you published the first book and the second book and the third book that helped you improve upon the process or the timing for the subsequent books?
Well, the timing I had very little control of. And actually, so the next book that I'm publishing, which is the sequel to Beyond the Ghetto Gates, is called Napoleon's Mirage. And with my track record, it's being published in November, which could have its own issues with elections and things like that. I'm just hoping to break the streak here. Um,
You will this time, yes.
but I think I certainly am better prepared for promotion at this point. I also know a great deal better what works and what doesn't work. and where to where to spend my efforts
Mhm.
versus with the fruit of her hands. Again, that was a long time ago. Simon and Schuster promised me the world and did very little. So that was a big lesson. um, with with the next book, I sort of said, all right, let me try everything, which was not just time consuming, but expensive. Because again, you're doing this all on your own.
Yeah.
So with Babylon, I've certainly, knowing what works, I've definitely ratcheted back, not done some of the things that didn't really help me the last time.
What did you
Um,
feel was the most impactful thing that you did to promote your book?
I think for me, it's events.
Mhm.
It's getting out there. It's
Live events.
live events. Again, it makes a difference when you're in a
You're
room
tooting
with
my horn
people.
here for me. I love it.
I mean, there's a difference when you're in the room and you have
Mhm.
a stack of books in front of you,
Yeah.
and people say, "Okay, I should support her in doing this." At least I hope that's what they're saying. Or, I've made a difference in how I present about my books, and they feel, okay, I really want to read this book.
Mhm.
So I think live events are really important. Um,
Yeah.
I've also, and I'm very grateful to you ladies for it. I also feel podcasts are a really useful way to get out there.
Mhm.
I feel like a lot of readers are also listeners
Yeah.
Yes.
because I love listening to podcasts and I love to read and I love listening to audiobooks, which to me, like podcasts are just like live story time for me. I just love it. And
Yeah.
I love hearing the stories about real people in real time.
Yeah.
Um, so, we talked a little bit before we went live about retiring from the business. Do we ever retire as writers?
No,
See, I don't, yeah. So
I have no
retiring,
plans of that. No.
right. Um, who was he was a poet and a writer, Donald Hall. Do you remember Donald?
Yes. Yes,
And
I
he
do.
wrote into his 90s.
Yes,
Yeah. Um, anyway, so you've been preparing to retire for a while,
I have.
and it's been a transition. I think it sounds like it's more of an emotional transition first before you move into the actual doing.
That's absolutely correct. I mean, it's so hard. You spend more than a decade and you build up a business, I mean, my my partner had started it. She is the founder of it, but it was really, and I'm tooting my own horn here, but it was really when I came on that we really started to take off. And so we average more than 200 students a session. We've got a number of incredible instructors that we've brought on. So it's been a real growth, um, from really very little to this major New Jersey slash virtual enterprise. And so, yeah, emotionally, it's hard to back away from that.
What do you think was your aha moment? Your thing like, okay, yeah, it's time, or I can do this.
I think some of it was the fact that I have two books coming out, one on top of the other, and I wanted more time to promote, to
Hmm.
get out
Hmm.
there, to do more things about it. Um, and I think too, one of the things when you run a business is that you're willing to accept um, doing a lot that can feel, repetitive or trivial, because it's your business.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Um, And I think this too has been somewhat of an issue with finding a replacement, which we actually had one wonderful woman lined up, and then the college she's teaching at gave her more money, and she's like, well, I can't do both. And we're like, take the money, stay
Yeah.
with the
Yeah.
college. And then we had someone else who was going to do it, and she, for whatever reason, she basically said, you know, I'm very busy. I'm not going to do this either. So we're sort of we started this process about a year ago, and we're kind of at, you know, back at step one in some cases with it,
Yeah.
which is problematic. But you know, it hasn't changed my plans. It's just we're gonna have to figure it out. And you know, when I say retire, it's really from the administrative side. I still plan to teach, and clearly I'm still going to write. So any of my students who are like hearing this and going, oh my God, I still plan to teach, folks. It's okay.
Love it.
Yeah. So we're getting close to wrapping up. So one last question. What's one piece of advice that you would give your younger self about pursuing your passion?
Not to wait.
Mm.
I waited, you know, when the kids were young. I waited when, you know, marriage asked for certain things, raising children asked for certain things. I would not wait if I had a chance to do it again. You know, sometimes, and I'm really talking about the writing here even more than the business. You have to be prepared. You have to tell yourself, no, you deserve this. No, you can do this. And you have to go ahead with it.
Just do it.
Just do it. Just do it. And to find ways to make it work in the context of family life. When I finally decided to do it, I woke up at 4:30 in the morning for about 5 years in order to finish that first book. It meant certain sacrifices.
Yeah.
But it was definitely what I wanted to do.
And what's stopping us from doing it sooner and not waiting? I mean, if we sit down and we really think, what is the real excuse? And typically it's fear of failure, fear of being vulnerable.
Absolutely.
You know, and as we get older, we realize we don't give a flying flip.
Right.
There you go. Absolutely.
It is so true. And as much as we kid about that, and I say it often because there are moments where I think in the moment it really definitely just needs to be said. Like I really just don't. I don't. But there's a reality there, and I giggle because you know you see things on social media and stuff like that where they giggle about the different generations. There is a reality in different generations where you or people in general where you hit that point where I don't give a flip. Whatever F word you need to use in that moment is entirely up to you.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Absolutely.
We've kept this episode pretty F-bomb free. I don't know what's wrong with us.
I know. We didn't even start off the new year the right way.
I'm sorry. If I'd known that was something we should be doing, I would have done a lot more of
it. We usually cover that before we go live. It's like, don't worry about cussing. We do it all the time.
Yeah.
So Laura, she has an offer for our audience that I think is amazing. So generous.
She does. So there is, I need to email Michelle for your free copy of her Beyond the Ghetto Gates ebook. And I'm going to let you talk about that a little bit more, what that freebie is for them, but we will ensure to include to it as well.
Right. Right. So Beyond the Ghetto Gates takes place when a young General Napoleon is on a Napoleon Bonaparte, obviously, is on a military campaign through Italy, and he discovers that the Jews are locked behind ghetto gates from sundown to sunup each day. And he sends his Jewish soldiers to go and demolish the gates. And so the
Is that a
novel
true
is really
story?
about, it is an absolute true
It's a true
story.
story.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolute true story. My sweet spot in writing is finding all this history that
Yeah.
nobody knows about and writing about it.
Yeah.
It is the story then is really about two women, one Jewish and one Catholic, and the aftermath of what this did to their lives.
Wow.
And there's this amazing, also supposedly true story about a portrait of the Virgin Mother, which was apparently a miracle portrait, and turned its eyes and cried and
Yeah.
did all sorts of things like that. So, and happy to send out a copy of the ebook, and which would get people prepared for the sequel, which
Yes.
again comes out in
Well,
November.
I'll be emailing you. And just so you know, the email, if you're listening, get a pencil and paper. I'm going to give you the email address to email Michelle and get your free copy of Beyond the Ghetto Gates. It is M, like Michelle, Cameron, 19 at gmail.com. And we'll drop the email and all the links, as you know, in the show notes. And then also, as you guys know, we like to have the current guest introduce the guest for the following week. And I am just blown away at the caliber of guests that we're getting. Um, and I had the pleasure of meeting one of these ladies in person. That's how we connected. I met Rhonda for brunch with a fellow local businesswoman here in Hernando County, where I live in Florida. So,
Oh, super
Michelle, do you want to?
excited to hear that you guys actually met in person.
Yeah.
Because Rhonda's from M3 and I've been knowing with her for 2
And we
years.
didn't know that until we were sitting at breakfast and talking.
That's great.
I know. It's such a small world.
It is.
It really
Love
is.
it.
That's great. So yes, I'm happy to do this. So the next one will be Rhonda Peoples and Deb Anderson, co-founders of Empowering Women Alliance. Rhonda is an empowering coach, dynamic public speaker, and Codebreaker Technologies trainer. Her coaching business leads women to own their greatness, break through their personal glass ceilings, and claim 6 to 7 figure incomes. I'm definitely going to stop in and listen,
Awesome.
guys.
It's amazing.
Deb is the founder of Purpose and Possibility Coaching and co-creator of its online courses. She writes fiction and nonfiction and guides others to discover and develop their own empowering stories. She has been co-founder and owner of a marketing and promotions event business for 26 years and co-founder of the largest quantum physics study group and speaker series in America.
Sounds like a
Wow.
brainiac, doesn't she?
She does. Amazing, though.
And Rhonda actually just published a book back in November, and we did promote her on our social. So go check that out. I ordered my copy. I can't wait to read it. I have so many books, you guys, that I like. I just got another one today. This one is called Zero Limits. It's by what's his name? Joe Vitale, and it's the Hawaiian system for health, wealth, peace, and more. I can't wait.
Love it.
But thank you, Michelle, for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. I just love
It
that we're
really
getting
has.
all these writers and authors and book people. I guess I'm attracting them. Being a reader myself. I don't know.
Absolutely. No, thank you both. It's been fun.
Enjoy.
Awesome. So we would love to include you in everything we're doing. So be sure to follow us and subscribe in all the places. All of those links are at the bottom in the show notes. And we will see you guys next week We're still live on Wednesdays at 6:30 Eastern. We're changing that up later this year. I think in February we're going to move to back to Mondays, but
Yes.
next week we'll be here Wednesday. So we'll see you then.
All right, everyone. Thank you for
Okay.
coming. Bye.
Bye-bye.